Take a good look at Tehran. The skyline is cinematic, the rhetoric of resistance is loud, and the sovereignty talk is everywhere. You see that logo of the Islamic Republic. It is supposed to represent divine justice and a middle finger to imperialism. It is a brand built on the idea of standing tall against the world. But here's the thing about logos. They are usually just very expensive masks. While the regime is busy screaming death to America on the streets, the children of the elite are busy elsewhere. We call them the Aghazadehs. They are the ones flexing Rolex watches and driving gold-plated Lamborghinis in North Tehran and Vancouver. It is a bit of a skill issue for the rest of the country, is it not? The Iranian Rial has basically become toilet paper at this point. With an inflation rate pushing past 40%, the revolution has shifted from a social movement into a massive pyramid scheme. The Revolutionary Guard, or the IRGC, now controls nearly 50% of the entire Iranian gross domestic product. This is not just a government failing its people, this is a corporate hostile takeover of an entire nation. Let's look past the branding and find the untold story of the Islamic Republic of Iran. When you think of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC, you probably imagine soldiers in olive green uniforms and stern faces. You might think of a traditional military branch, but that is the first mistake you make in understanding this brand. The IRGC is not just a military, it is a Fortune 500 company that happens to own tanks and missiles. It is the ultimate corporate entity with a monopoly on violence and a seat at every boardroom table in the country. This is not a conspiracy theory, this is a cold, hard business reality. If you want to build a road, drill for oil, or buy a cell phone in Iran, you are almost certainly putting money into the pockets of the IRGC. The heart of this economic empire is a massive conglomerate called Khatam al-Anbiya. This organization is the construction and engineering arm of the Guard. It started after the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s as a way to rebuild the country. But it quickly mutated into something far more predatory. Today, Khatam al-Anbiya is the largest contractor in Iran. It employs tens of thousands of people and controls thousands of projects worth billions of dollars. We are talking about dams, tunnels, oil platforms, and even the Tehran metro. They do not just win contracts through fair bidding, they win them because they have the guns. Imagine trying to outbid a company that also runs the intelligence services and the border patrol. That is a massive skill issue for any private competitor. In fact, there is no such thing as a truly private sector in Iran anymore. The IRGC has performed a slow-motion corporate hostile takeover of the entire national economy. Let's talk about the logic of exploitation. The IRGC loves sanctions. That might sound weird to you. Why would a company love it when the world tries to cut them off? Because sanctions are the ultimate market barrier. When international giants like Shell or Total pull out of an oil field because of Western pressure, who is left to take the contract? Khatam al-Anbiya. When foreign tech companies are banned from the market, who gets to build the infrastructure? The IRGC. They have created a closed-loop system where they are the only ones capable of doing business. They have turned Iran into a walled garden where they own the walls, the garden, and the air you breathe. This is not about religious purity, this is about market share. Conflict is their research and development. Stability is a threat to their bottom line. If the region was peaceful and the borders were open, the IRGC would have to compete with actual efficient companies. And we all know they cannot do that. So they keep the tension high and the sanctions coming. It is a brilliant, if evil, business model. Then we have the banyads. These are supposedly charitable foundations that were seized after the 1979 revolution. They were meant to help the poor and the oppressed. But in reality, they are massive tax-exempt slush funds. The largest of them is the Banyad Mustaza Fund, the foundation of the oppressed. It controls hundreds of companies in everything from chemicals to tourism. It is answerable only to the supreme leader. No oversight, no taxes, no transparency. It is the ultimate corporate gaslighting. They tell the people they are working for the oppressed while they sit on an empire worth tens of billions of dollars. While the average Iranian struggles to buy meat because the rial has lost so much value, the directors of these banyads are living the high life. Consider the Telecommunication Company of Iran, or TCI. In 2009, a consortium linked to the IRGC bought a 51% stake in the company for nearly $8 billion. It was the largest transaction in the history of the Tehran Stock Exchange. By controlling the phones and the internet, the IRGC did not just get a massive revenue stream. They got the ultimate data mining tool. They can see who you talk to, what you buy, and what you think. This is corporate control taken to its logical extreme. They are the service provider and the secret police at the same time. If you complain about the service on social media, they do not just send a generic customer support bot, they send a van to your house. The IRGC has also mastered the art of the shadow economy. They control the ports and the borders. This means they are the biggest smugglers in the region. They move oil out through ghost fleets and bring luxury goods in through private docks that the official customs office cannot even touch. They are the ones who make sure the Aghazadehs get their Lamborghinis and their champagne while the rest of the country is told that austerity is a revolutionary virtue. It is the ultimate main character energy. They believe they are the only ones who matter and everyone else is just an extra in their movie. When you look at the numbers, it is staggering. Estimates suggest that the IRGC and the religious foundations control between 30 to 50% of Iran's entire economy. When one entity has that much power, they do not need to follow the laws of economics. They make the laws. They can trigger inflation to wipe out the savings of the middle class, making them more dependent on government handouts. They can manipulate the currency to favor their own export businesses. It is a systematic gutting of a nation's wealth for the benefit of a small board of directors in olive drab. This is the common Iran L that we see every day. The people pay the price in the form of 40% inflation and a currency that is basically worthless on the global stage. But for the IRGC, this is just another profitable fiscal year. They have successfully rebranded a mafia protection racket as a divine mission. They are not serving God, they are serving their own balance sheets. And as long as they control the guns and the money, they think they can keep this pyramid scheme going forever. But history shows that even the most powerful monopolies eventually face a reckoning. The logo is starting to peel, and what is underneath is not a revolution. It is just a very corrupt, very wealthy corporation. If you want to understand how the Islamic Republic of Iran views the world, you have to stop thinking like a diplomat and start thinking like a venture capitalist. But instead of investing in the next big artificial intelligence startup or a revolutionary green energy firm, the board of directors in Tehran is focused on a different kind of portfolio. They are the premier venture capitalists of regional instability. Their business model is the export of chaos, and their portfolio companies have names you know all too well: Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. Think about it this way. Why would a rational CEO spend billions of dollars on a hospital in a remote province like Sistan and Baluchistan when they could fund a sophisticated drone program for a militia 3,000 miles away? To the IRGC, the hospital has a low return on investment. It only keeps people alive and healthy, which does not really help the brand's global standing. But a fleet of drones in the hands of a proxy? That is leverage. That is a seat at the big table. That is what we call regional market share. Let us look at their star pupil, their one true unicorn, Hezbollah. For decades, the IRGC has poured hundreds of millions of dollars every single year into Lebanon. This is not charity, it is a long-term strategic investment. Hezbollah is the most successful subsidiary in the history of the IRGC. They have their own media wings, their own social services, and most importantly, a military wing that acts as the IRGC's forward operating base on the Mediterranean. It is the ultimate hedge against a direct attack on Tehran. If you touch the parent company, the subsidiary starts a fire in your backyard. This is not just warfare, it is a diversified risk management strategy. Then you have the Syrian venture. During the Syrian civil war, the IRGC did not just send a few advisors, they doubled down. They spent billions upon billions of dollars to keep the Assad regime on life support. To the average Iranian taxpayer, this looked like a massive sunk cost fallacy. Why keep throwing good money after bad in a country that is literally crumbling? But from a corporate perspective, Syria is a vital link in the supply chain. It is the logistics hub that connects Tehran to the Mediterranean. Without it, the distribution network for their regional products falls apart. So they spent the money while their own citizens faced a massive housing crisis and skyrocketing food prices. It is a classic case of corporate gaslighting. They tell the people that these foreign adventures are about holy shrines and fighting terrorists, but in reality, they are just protecting their trade routes. And we cannot forget the Houthis in Yemen. This was a low-cost, high-impact move. For the price of a few shipments of missile parts and some technical advisors, the IRGC managed to disrupt one of the most important shipping lanes in the world. They essentially performed a hostile takeover of the Red Sea. They turned a local insurgency into a global headache. In the world of business, we call this a market disruptor. They did not need to build a massive navy. They just needed to give a motivated group of people enough tech to make everyone else nervous. It is a brilliant play if you do not care about the human cost or the international laws you are breaking. But here is where the corporate gaslighting really gets intense. The regime spends all this time and money trying to project what we call main character energy on the global stage. They want to be seen as the leaders of the resistance, the only ones brave enough to stand up to the Western giants. They use their state media to create this narrative of a powerful, unified front. They post high production value videos of their missiles and their masked soldiers trying to trend on the digital landscape. But if you look at the comments from actual Iranians, you see the ratio. The people are not buying the hype. They know that every dollar sent to Gaza or Damascus is a dollar stolen from their own future. The data contrast is honestly heartbreaking. While the IRGC is flexing its regional influence, the infrastructure inside Iran is decaying at an alarming rate. We are talking about massive water shortages, a power grid that cannot handle a summer heat wave, and schools that are literally falling down. Sistan and Baluchistan, one of the poorest regions in the country, has some of the highest unemployment and lowest literacy rates in the world. But does the VC firm in Tehran care? Not really. There is no strategic value in a well-fed child in Zahedan. There is, however, huge value in a rocket launcher in the hands of a proxy group. This is the ultimate common Iran L for the average person. You are forced to pay for a global expansion strategy that brings you nothing but sanctions and isolation. You are the involuntary investor in a firm that treats your well-being as an afterthought. The regime tells you that being a pariah state is actually a sign of strength. They say that the world is afraid of you because you are so powerful. That is the peak of gaslighting. In reality, the world is not afraid of the Iranian people. The world is exhausted by the IRGC's business model. The IRGC thinks they are playing four-dimensional chess. They think they are the smartest guys in the room because they can keep the region on edge. But they are failing to realize that a company with a dying home market eventually collapses. You cannot export chaos forever if your own factory is on fire. The Iranian people are the factory, and they are tired of being used as fuel for a regional fire that does not benefit them. They are tired of the skill issue of a leadership that knows how to build a drone but does not know how to fix a toilet. When you track the money, the picture becomes clear. The IRGC is not a revolutionary force. It is a military-industrial complex that has gone rogue. They have created a cycle of dependency where their proxy groups need Iranian money to survive, and the IRGC needs those proxy groups to justify their own existence and their massive budget. It is a self-sustaining loop of conflict. And the best part for the board of directors? They do not have to fight the wars themselves. They just write the checks and let others do the dying. So next time you see a headline about a drone strike or a new militia being formed in the Middle East, do not think about religion or ideology. Think about the venture capitalists in Tehran checking their portfolio. Think about the CEO of Chaos counting his returns. And remember the 85 million people who are being forced to fund this entire operation against their will. It is a corporate empire built on a foundation of regional blood and domestic poverty. Every major corporation has a public relations department. Some are better than others at spinning a disaster into a victory. But the Islamic Republic of Iran has a PR strategy that is on a completely different level. They do not just try to manage the news, they try to own the entire internet. In the corporate world, if you cannot win the argument with your customers, you might try to bury the bad reviews. In Iran, the board of directors just unplugs the router. Welcome to the digital Berlin Wall, the ultimate corporate control mechanism for a regime that is terrified of its own shareholders, the 85 million people of Iran. Let's talk about their flagship tech product, the National Information Network. They like to call it the halal internet. Think of it as a massive, countrywide intranet. It is the ultimate walled garden. The goal is simple. They want to create a digital landscape where every single byte of data is monitored, filtered, and controlled by the state. It is the dream of every authoritarian CEO. If you can control the flow of information, you can control reality itself. When things get a little too heated on the streets, the IRGC hits the kill switch. They disconnect Iran from the global web and force everyone onto the domestic network. This is not just about censorship, it is about domesticating the truth. On the halal internet, the only reviews allowed are 5-star ratings for the regime. Anything else is deleted as a violation of terms of service. The hypocrisy here is actually legendary. It is a classic case of rules for thee, but not for me. The regime officially bans platforms like X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram for the general public. They tell the people that these sites are tools of Western soft war and moral corruption. Yet, if you look at those very platforms, you will find the supreme leader, the president, and every major official posting propaganda daily. They are using the very tools they call evil to spread their own brand of gaslighting. They want to have the main character energy on the global stage while keeping their own citizens in the dark. It is the ultimate corporate double standard. They realize that to play the game of international influence, they need to be on the platforms where the world is watching. But they do not want their own people to see what the world is saying back to them. Because every time they post, they get ratioed into oblivion by Iranians using virtual private networks. This brings us to the 2022 protests sparked by the tragic death of Mahsa Amini. The woman life freedom movement was not just a social uprising. From the perspective of the IRGC, it was a direct threat to their supply chain of control. Information during those months was like oxygen for the protesters. They used social media to organize, to document the brutality of the security forces, and to show the world that the logo of the Islamic Republic was peeling away. The regime's response was a digital scorched earth policy. They did not just slow down the internet. They performed a total blackout in certain regions. They knew that if the people could talk to each other in real time, the corporate structure of the regime would collapse. But why is the IRGC so involved in the digital space? Because data is the new oil. By controlling the National Information Network, the IRGC can monitor dissent before it even reaches the streets. They use sophisticated surveillance tech, much of it imported or reverse engineered, to track activists and journalists. It is the most invasive form of corporate data mining imaginable. They are not just looking at your purchase history, they are looking at your soul. They want to know who you are talking to and what you are dreaming about. If you post something that challenges the brand, you do not just get a community strike or a temporary ban. You get a visit from the Basij. The economic cost of this digital isolation is staggering. Every time the regime throttles the internet to stop a protest, they kill thousands of small businesses that rely on Instagram and WhatsApp for their livelihoods. In a country where the official economy is a mess, the digital economy was a lifeline for many young Iranians. But the IRGC does not care about the bottom line of a small shop owner in Isfahan. They only care about the stability of their own conglomerate. They are willing to burn the entire digital economy to the ground if it means they can stay in power for one more day. It is the ultimate skill issue in governance. They cannot compete in the marketplace of ideas, so they just shut the market down. This digital Berlin Wall is also a massive business opportunity for those with connections. Since the official platforms are blocked, everyone in Iran uses virtual private networks, or VPNs. And who do you think controls the lucrative market for selling these VPNs? Many reports suggest that entities tied to the security forces are the ones profiting from the very tools people need to bypass the government's own filters. They create the problem and then they sell you the expensive, unofficial solution. It is a brilliant, if evil, business model. They tax your freedom and then they charge you a subscription fee to get a tiny piece of it back. The tragedy of the digital Berlin Wall is that it creates a massive brain drain. The brightest tech minds in Iran do not want to work on building a halal internet. They do not want to be part of a corporate machine that spies on its own people, so they leave. They take their talents to Silicon Valley, to Toronto, to Berlin. This is a massive loss of human capital for the nation. But for the IRGC, a smaller, less educated, and more isolated population is easier to manage. They would rather rule over a stagnant pond than a flowing river. In the end, the digital Berlin Wall is a sign of weakness, not strength. A confident brand does not need to silence its critics. A successful company does not need to hide its financial reports or its human rights record. The fact that the Islamic Republic has to spend so much energy and money on digital control proves that they know their brand is failing. They are trying to patch a sinking ship with digital duct tape, but the leaks are everywhere. No matter how high they build the wall, the truth always finds a way to get over it. The Iranian people are tech-savvy and resilient. They are finding ways to communicate through decentralized networks and satellite links. The IRGC might own the routers, but they do not own the spirit of the people who are tired of being gaslit by a corporate entity wearing the mask of a religion. So, we have reached the end of the audit. We have looked at the shadow conglomerate that eats the national economy. We have analyzed the venture capital firm that exports chaos across the Middle East. And we have stared at the digital wall that tries to keep 85 million people in a state of permanent gaslighting. Now it is time for the final verdict. We need to ask the most important question in business. Is the Islamic Republic of Iran, as a brand, actually sustainable? The short answer is no. You cannot run a 21st century economy on 7th century logic and 1980s smuggling tactics forever. It is a fundamental skill issue in governance. The board of directors, which is essentially the supreme leader and the top brass of the IRGC, thinks they can keep the ship afloat by just punching more holes in the hull and calling it a new ventilation system. But the water is rising and the rial is sinking faster than a lead weight in the Persian Gulf. Let us look at the financial statement of this regime. The currency, the rial, has lost more than 90% of its value in the last decade alone. When your money becomes toilet paper, your social contract with the people is effectively void. The regime tries to blame external factors like Western sanctions, but that is just more corporate gaslighting. While the average Iranian worker has to take 3 jobs just to afford a kilo of meat, the business empire of the supreme leader, known as Setad, is worth an estimated $95 billion. That is not a government, that is a hedge fund with a flag. It is the ultimate main character energy from a leadership that thinks the entire wealth of a nation belongs to their personal portfolio. The hypocrisy is what truly creates the disconnect. This brand is built on the idea of revolutionary purity and simple living. They tell the people that being a pariah state is a badge of honor, but then you look at the Aghazadehs. The children of the revolution are not living in the shadows. They are in North Tehran, in London, in Vancouver, and in Istanbul. They are posting their luxury vacations and their designer outfits on the very platforms their fathers have banned for the public. It is a massive ratio in real life. The people see the elite living a life of absolute decadence, while they are told to embrace the economy of resistance. It is the most blatant form of insider trading. The leaders sell the ideology to the masses, but they keep the hard currency for themselves. The IRGC has created a system where conflict is the only way they can stay profitable. They need the threat of war to justify their control over the borders and the ports. They need the sanctions to keep competition out of the market, but this is a classic bubble. You cannot keep building a business on the suffering of your own customer base. Eventually, the customers either go broke or they stop buying what you are selling. The Iranian people have stopped buying the revolutionary brand. They see the logo for what it is, a mask for a mafia that has hijacked their history and their future. The 2022 protests were a warning shot across the bow. It showed that the Gen Z of Iran, the digital natives who have grown up with a global perspective, are completely done with the old corporate narrative. They do not care about the slogans from 1979. They care about having a normal life, a stable currency, and a connection to the world. For the regime, this is a nightmare scenario. They are facing a workforce that refuses to be gaslit anymore. They are facing a generation that sees through the propaganda as easily as a cheap filter on a photo. Is there a path to restructuring? Some people talk about reform, but let us be real. How do you reform a company where the board of directors owns all the assets and the security team has all the guns? The IRGC will not just walk away from 50% of the GDP because of a polite request. They have too much to lose. They have tied their personal wealth to the survival of the regime. This makes them dangerous, but it also makes them brittle. They have no exit strategy. They are all in on a failing business model. The international community sees the brand for what it is, too. Beyond the fancy diplomatic speeches, the world knows that dealing with Iran means dealing with the IRGC. It means your money might end up funding a drone that hits a merchant ship or a rocket that targets a city. This makes Iran a toxic asset in the global market. No serious long-term investor wants anything to do with a country where the legal system is just a subsidiary of the secret police. The brain drain we talked about is the ultimate proof of this failure. The best and the brightest are voting with their feet, leaving the regime with a shrinking talent pool and a growing list of problems it cannot solve. The logo is peeling, and underneath there is nothing but a hollowed-out shell run by a corrupt board of directors. They are the clerics and the generals who have turned a proud civilization into a gas station with a militia. They have traded the long-term prosperity of their people for short-term survival and regional influence. But influence without a solid economic foundation is just a house of cards. One day, the wind will blow just a little too hard and the entire structure will come down. The lesson here is simple. You can manipulate the market for a long time. You can use violence to silence your critics. You can use digital walls to hide the truth. But you cannot escape the ledger of truth forever. Eventually, the numbers have to add up. And for the Islamic Republic of Iran, the numbers are deep in the red. The revolutionary brand is bankrupt. It is just a matter of time before the creditors, the 85 million people of Iran, come to collect. Stay sharp and stay informed. Remember, knowledge is your only leverage in this game. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe to join our community. This was Behind the Logo, and I will catch you on the flip side.